Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Jesus here with the Van Bros. Unscripted video, but these are always my best ones. So today, I actually want to talk about some of the stuff that, like, in my opinion, has made Vanguard feel like it's no longer Vanguard. How would I put this? Overdress has done a lot of good stuff for the game. Honestly, I think you would have to be a little like backwards to think that there hasn't been like net positives from Overdress to Cardfight Vanguard as a whole. Such as like the normalization of orders. I know they started in V, but orders kind of became a bigger thing in Overdress. Zones. I mean, now we're getting like order zones, set orders. We're getting so many things that kind of break the mold of what Cardfight Vanguard is. I think the best example is like, ironically enough, like the collab decks. As much as I hate collabs, but for a completely different reason, the collab decks do a great job when it comes to making you play a game within the bounds of Vanguard, but also breaking them. Buddy fight being the best example. You literally change into a buddy fighter, and instead of using crests, or instead of using energy, you use a gauge. Honestly, this actually fixes, or this actually kind of goes along with what I wanted to talk about today, which I think is the four main things that kind of make this game not feel like Vanguard, kind of feel like an autopilot game. The ride line's not on here. I like the ride line. Honestly, the ride line, I think Sheriff Vanguard said it best, where back in the day we had our starters that could barely sometimes get their effects rolling because some of them were great, some of them were not, the Forerunner starters. But at least with the ride line, you have two surefire like skills that you will be able to do. Think of it as a stretched out or a prolonged starter. But I think the first one that we're gonna go to is the front trigger. In Cardfight Vanguard, there's always a little mini game that arises whenever you go into the battle phase. And that little mini game is how many to pass. You know, if I'm swinging with a grade 1 and you guard for 15, and all of a sudden, you know, you have to wonder, okay, well, I know this trigger's not, if I hit an actual trigger, not fucking the over trigger, which first and foremost, over trigger, get the fuck out of here. But back in the day, it used to be, you know, oh, this is a no pass, so I just give the trigger to my rear guard. Before, that's how it usually worked, or it would make it a hit 1. So, you know, you check a trigger, you hit it, perfect, the attack goes through. Check a front early game. Okay, not only does your attack go through, every other attack that you were going to do that turn, if you were planning on rushing your opponent, will also probably go through, and if not, will take away cards from your opponent's hand, because you're spreading out that power. A better way to put it is, if you're at grade 3, and your opponent makes it a hit 2. Because now, back in the day, you would attack, look at the top card of the deck. If that card was a trigger, like a draw, a heal, or a crit, you legitimately had to move the cogs in your head to see whether or not you had enough triggers in the deck to give everything to your Vanguard, or if you should start to use the power to invest in a rear guard for another attack. You would have to look at your opponent's hand. How many cards do they have in hand? If I give this trigger to my rear guard, are they going to have enough to guard that? What are the different scenarios? What are the different things that could happen? And this is all stuff that's happening. This is all stuff that's being thought of as you're in the middle of an attack. But if that triggers a front trigger, you no longer have to worry about that. Now, you check a front trigger, that 1 to pass or that 2 to pass. Now it just becomes a thoughtless thing because, okay, well, my front row gets plus 10k. Next check, it's a heal trigger. Okay, well, I didn't even have to think about where to put that trigger power. Had it been a crit heal, now you're looking at something else entirely. In my opinion, all that this card does is take away thought from the person that's playing. It takes away urgency. It only adds comfort to the player. The only reason we're running front triggers at all is because this is the type of trigger that they've been focusing on since, honestly, set 4? Not even set 4, since set 2. I mean, you have the heal fronts or the shield fronts, you have the soul fronts. If you take a look at the other trigger types, crits have their, they have the one that goes into soul, but you're only allowed to run 8 crits now. So, I mean, if I'm going to run 8 crits, 4 of them might as well be the ones with the effects. Heals are great, but you're also taking away shield when you're not in a niche scenario. Not only that, but draws, nobody plays draws because even then it's just a 10k shield. Why would you not run the card that says give your front row 10,000 power? Why wouldn't you run the card that gives your front row 10,000 power? That leads to my next mechanic. Persona Ride. I think everybody can now agree that this is probably the worst mechanic that we have been forced to play in Cardfight Vanguard. Unlike previous mechanics, and I'm not talking about I'm not talking about mechanics such as overdress, crossover dress. I'm talking about the homogeneous mechanic that every card printed has. Back in the day, it was Limit Break. After that, Break Rights. After that, Legion. After that, Stride. And after that, Gifts. Persona Ride has to probably be one of the worst mechanics to just come out of Vanguard in a while. Break Rides, Limit Break were cool because once you reach that point in the game where you were at 4, you were about to, you were teetering across losing and winning, you unlock skills based off of how much damage you were at. It was kind of like a desperation move. It sucks that obviously at the time they didn't really a lot of the mechanics. I'm gonna say they sort of hit they hit the nail on the head and they still fumbled at the same time. Because let's not forget there were limit breaks and break rights that just did nothing unless you were at 4 damage, and so that gave your opponent an opening as to, oh, if I just don't damage you, then I guess you lose. Because I could just set up a turn and then just kill you in 1 turn. Whoever reached 4 damage first was the winner. Legion was a little similar because with Legion, first to hit grade 3 or second to hit grade 3 was in a pretty good spot because now you could Legion first. Same thing with Stride. Whoever hit grade 3 before they changed the rules, whoever hit grade 3 second was probably in a better spot until they released G Guardians, in which case you were probably still in a better spot because you could Stride first. But in terms of Generation Break, Honestly, maybe going first, you're in a better spot too, because depending on how many heals you opened, you could probably kickstart a lot of your skills off rip, you know, like by guarding excessively with your G Guardians, knowing that if you're at GB3 for your first stride, you're essentially unstoppable. But the thing is, with Persona Ride, it literally just became if you go first, you win, because you can Persona Ride first. The other ones, you kind of had a game plan even if you didn't get to go first. Like, unless you're Legion. But even then in Legion, if we really take a look at the mechanic, it's really just give your Vanguard extra power. They don't really gain anything out of it. Sometimes if they're in Legion state, sure. You're putting 4 cards back into your deck, which more often than not was a heal or a crit. But with Persona Ride, what are you really doing? Front row gets plus 10,000 throughout the turn. You draw a card. And all because you rode the same exact card that you did the previous turn. There's been a thing where people say that Bushiroad doesn't know what to do with the grade 3s, the excessive grade 3s that you're running in hand. And, you know, to a certain extent, I think I agree too. Back in the day, you were forced to run grade 3s because, you know, you had to ride into a grade 3. So if you didn't see one, you were kind of out of luck. So, you know, we didn't have a ride line or a ride deck. So, yeah, if you needed to have extra copies of them. And then it's like, okay, well, what do you do once you hit the, you know, once you do ride? Well, those copies either become discard fodder for your PGs, or you could just call them to the field to have a better formation, you know. You don't have intercept, but, you know, they're your attackers, and grade 2 still have shield that work in hand. We go over to, you know, we go over to Stride, and because this, you know, grade 3, the excessive grade 3 problem has been going on since, like, you know, in Break Ride they kind of fixed it because now you have grade 3s that you could ride on top of, but, you know, you draw them out of order, you're kind of fucked. So, you know, once they hit Stride, where your cost was literally discarding grades up to 3, like, okay, that is a pretty blatant way of getting rid of your grade 3s in hand. And yeah, obviously it works. Like, you're using a grade 3 to pay a cost. Eventually Ultimate Stride would kind of be similar to Persona Ride, similar to a Persona Blast, where you had to discard a copy of your Vanguard in order to Ultimate Stride, which is such a sick mechanic. I love mechanics like that, where it's like, you know, like, this is your Hail Mary. Then honestly, I truly think that sorry, my friends are saying that that new buddy fight card for Vanguard is lame because you get a buff if you're a kid and you don't Persona Ride, but I said it is a kid's card game. So during V era, if you rode your Vanguard, regardless of what it was, you got a gift. And I'm gonna be the first to say it. I didn't care for gifts, but that's also because, you know, it's a mechanic that Bushiroad kind of did fuck with. Like, I think the reason why I wasn't such a fan of D era wasn't necessarily because of the new mechanic. It was because of the fact that they were taking away so much. We went from being a 24 clan game with like a ton of personality to a bland like rock paper scissors simulator with only 4 clans. Like, you know, we went from having shit like, you know, Tachikaze, Gear Chronicle, Nubatama Murakumo, like Angel Feather. We went from having stuff like that, like completely different clans, like each with their own aesthetics, each with their own playstyle. Even though a lot of these decks ended up becoming just, you know, multi-attack slop. We went from that to 4, and they decided to do obviously the 4 original, like the 4 OGs, but the gameplay was just not there. They didn't raise the ceiling. They didn't like make it. I think the point of a reboot is to make the point of entry easier, not the game easier. Like, you're not gonna see Yu-Gi-Oh! Reboot and go back to vanilla beatdown. I think with Bushiroad, whenever they do things like this, whenever they reset or they do anything to make the point of entry easier for the person, they're honestly not thinking of you or me or a regular person that goes to the card shop. They're thinking of like a child in primary school who legitimately like still needs to have a parent walk them to school. Like, they're thinking of that kid whenever they're making product, which honestly, listen, I do think that children need to have a better way of playing card games that isn't just fucking buying graded slabs, like, you know. But, you know, I'm pretty sure it doesn't help a kid or help a parent make a decision to purchase product if that child is not going to be using their fucking brain to play the game. Like, yeah, print words on the card, print numbers on the card. It's a perfect way to get a kid to learn to read and do basic math. So why are you taking that away by making these fucking cards that are, they have nothing? It's, oh, on place, get 5,000 power. I was going on about Persona, right? And I think to bring it back to Persona, right? Now we find out what to do with our excessive grade 3s, which is to rewrite the same fucking card. It doesn't matter if your opponent is playing something that you have. What if, you know, if your nation happens to have like an unlocker, now that we have lock back technically. You know, it's not. We've had 3 different lock decks in standard now, and Bushiroad is scared to give True Lock a thing, and I somewhat agree, because if we can't handle, you know, anything more than 5k and restand, then we probably can't handle a different playstyle in Bushiroad's eyes. But, you know, I think a great way to show how flawed this mechanic was, when they decided to go back to Aichi and Kai for the 15th anniversary, they made sure that Alfred was able to write into Soul Saber, or that Dragonic Obler was able to, you know, write into Vortex Dragon. Same thing with Uranus and the fucking dragon. And I guess they didn't do it with Stride, but obviously, yeah, it makes sense that instead of making Chrono Jet be able to write, like, you know, write into like that other Steam fighter, you could just use that as discard fodder for Stride, and you got a advantage from doing so. With Persona, right, it's like, you know, you run 4 copies of your, or you run 3 copies in the main deck of your grade 3, because, well, why should you? Like, that's the thing. Now that you're able to just write into it because of your bright deck, why do I have to run extra copies of my grade 3? Why should I buy extra copies of my grade 3? Bushiroad said, well, you know, if you manage to ride the same copy, you get a bonus. But really, why? That's the question. Why should I run more copies in the first place? If you're going to give me a ride deck, if you gave players a ride deck back in like Stride era, they're not going to play multiple copies of their Strider. They're just going to play more cards in their main deck. They're going to make room for it. Same thing with it's the same thing with what's it called? With V. In V, they put things like, they made PGs draw triggers, which I think is one of the best things that they've ever done. And so did people run extra, you know, did people opt into using draw PGs to get the extra room in their deck to play other cards that they otherwise couldn't? Yeah, they did. It got to the point where in Overdress, you know, it was 50 cards. 4 out of those 50 were your ride deck. It got to the point where the designers really fucked up, made it super easy to check Overtrigger. And it's like, okay, we need to add more cards to the main deck. And so they said, okay, ride deck is completely separate. And a lot of people are like, oh my gosh, you have so much, like, even though it's 4 extra cards, it's like, This is so much more, like, this is room for tech. And then they started printing cyclers, and there goes that thinking that, you know, how am I going to fill up the space? It's truly a shitty mechanic, because it's like you're running it literally because you have to. If you don't have Persona Ride, most of your cards don't have an effect that works, because usually they're locked into either having Persona Road that turn, or being an elementary schooler, or having 4 damage, which, you know, goes back to not having kind of any control into what your card does. They still print. It's so stupid. Like, I mean, in V it made sense. You would print grade 3s that had the gift marker, because, yeah, why wouldn't you? You know? Which is cool, because let's say you're playing Royals, right? And you ride into the wrong Alfred, you're still gonna get a gift for that turn. It's not the same with Persona. It's not the same with Overdress, because if you have a handful of grade 3s and none of them happen to be your fucking Persona Ride, even though nowadays it's kind of impossible. But let's, you know, in this example, let's say you're playing Rezael, you're already hit Vita, so your hand's full of regular Rezaels. You're not gonna Persona Ride into the old Rezael. It's stupid. You're just gonna use that to fucking pay the cost. But now you have a handful of grade 3s, and you can't do anything with them. You can't call them to the field, because now you're losing out on Vita's effect. You're not gonna ride over it, because you're riding an upgraded Vanguard to a weaker one. Which makes me think, aside from being boss units, what really is the point of having grade 3 rear guards? You know? Do we gain anything extra from having a grade 3 rear guard? If you really thought about it, why do they print grade 3 rear guards with no Vanguard skill that have the Persona Ride icon? In what world do we need to Persona Ride those cards? It just shows that Bushiroad still has no idea what to do with the excessive grade 3s that they're printing. Like, if a grade 3 unit had maybe intercept or boost instead of the triple, or the, you know, the twin drive and the Persona Ride icon, now that's interesting. Give it a 3 or 2k shield. But then here's the thing, it's a grade 3. It has to have no shield, because originally you were sacrificing shield for higher power. So maybe give it a Vanguard effect, so that you could choose, oh, maybe instead of having this be my Vanguard, I could have this card be my Vanguard. At this point, if you're not printing a grade 3 with a Vanguard effect, why print it at all? It makes no sense to me. Maybe to you it makes perfect sense, and I would have, I'd ask for you to type it in comments, like, hey, like, this is the reason why they still put Persona Ride icons on grade 3s with no Vanguard skills. I mean, it's just the, when they design a card, it just automatically, they hit grade 3 and it auto-populates everything else. Persona Ride, Twin Drive, 13k power, 1 critical. I think that is probably, like, enough about Persona Ride. I don't really have a good segue for this one. But the next and final issue that I have, or not even issue, but like, this is such a fumble, is energy. Energy is so misused and unnecessary in Cardfight Vanguard. Why did we need an extra resource? They could barely, like, keep up with Counterblast and Soul Blast costs, like, and not even in a bad way. Like, I don't know, I don't understand why we needed to have energy. If you really think about it, all energy did was like what fronts did to triggers. Energy as a resource just takes away urgency from a player, because if you, like, looking at previous cards, we're really saying that a Counterblast, something that is a resource that is, like, very heavy for the player, especially if you don't have a way to countercharge in your deck, or a reliable way to countercharge in your deck. It was a heavy cost. It's your life. You only have 5 of them. But now, instead of having to do that, you begin your turn with a free counter charge or a free counter blast, because most skills are energy blast 3 or counter blast 1. So it's like, okay, well, now you have one free counter blast. You have one free skill that your opponent has no way of stopping. Which, in my opinion, is really stupid, because Vanguard is really cool when your opponent has a way for you to stop playing the game, and you have to think of a way to start playing again. A good example is the new stride for Night Rose. Let's say you're being, let's say you want to stride into the first stride, the new stride that I got, drag it. But your opponent kind of saw that coming, and they said, I don't want to deal with 4 attacks off rip. So either they attacked your rear guards, they focused on your rear guards so that they could still get their drive checks and not deal you any damage, or they kind of started to stall out on dealing you damage. So now they took away a card, they took away your ability to stride, counterblast 1, revive, and have a multi-attack, and enable a multi-attack. Now you're kind of forced to go into Obadiah, but you still set up your plays. You have your option of being able to play around your opponent damage denying you. You can't really Soul Blast tonight, but Soul Blast costs usually were more so for technical reasons, like you did a Soul Blast to call something from the field. If you discarded it, you played a Soul Blast to power something up. You weren't really Soul Blasting to restand a rear guard. I don't think there's ever been a case where you're Soul Blasting to restand a rear guard, and if there was a case of restanding for Soul Blast, it was more than 1. Usually Soul Blast 2 or 3 or 5. But now you have energy, and your opponent can't stop you from getting energy. Usually you're not using energy for the first 2 turns unless you have a cycler. And so, now your turn's essentially free because you didn't actually go through and, okay, you discard a card to ride. You ride your Vanguard. Oh, you happen to ride this Vanguard that a card in the drop zone needs you to ride in order to be able to call itself out. So you Energy Blast 3 to call out that card. There's no Soul Blast involved. There's nothing involved. You just Energy Blast 3. You still have 6 energy because you went second. You're losing. You went second, but you have excessive energy. On place, you call another card from hand. On place, it says Energy Blast 3, discard a card, and draw 2. Alright, I'll play it. Energy Blast 3, discard, draw 2. The card I discarded, I'm going to be able to, use later. I'll be able to equip or put in a soul or whatever. It's a discard fodder. I just happened to get lucky and I had it in hand. I'm going to go ahead and attack with my rear guard. And I'm going to swing with my Vanguard. And my rear guard saw that my Vanguard attacked. So it says that if this sees that, counter blast or energy blast to restand. My opponent didn't give me any counter blast last turn, but I still have 3 energy left, so I'm going to pay my 3 energy and restand. I'm down to 0 energy. My opponent had no say in whether or not I could do any of these skills. Now, if we changed it to Soul Blast and Counter Blast, I can still build a field by Soul Blasting. I could probably still Soul Blast for a cost if they made that, on play Soul Blast discard. But generally, there's ways that my opponent can control what I do and ways that my opponent can't. And I think Bushiroad is forgetting that, your resources, the resources that they print on these cards, the cost that they print on these cards matters a lot. And I don't think they were ready for another resource. I don't even think the game needed another resource. There was nothing wrong with Counter Blast and Soul Blast. Energy, just to me, it's so funny because I watch videos on people I watch videos from other people like, oh, this is how you fix energy. This is what you should do with energy. Or people complaining that they haven't done anything interesting with energy. When, in my opinion, I don't even think we should have had energy in the first place. What does it provide to the game? It didn't provide anything. The game already had 2 good resources. Honestly, one resource that has not been done before. Like, at least we don't have mana. Like, we're not a magic clone. We had something like special when it came to like card games. Like when it came to like card game mechanics, I don't think I've seen a card game do counterblast, tie it to your life and make it like actually cool. Like, I'm gonna give Cardfight Vanguard the up on that. Like, at the very least, it's not a magic clone. It plays completely differently from other card games. But now, you know, you take a look at the official energy counter, and like, what's the difference between this and a fucking Digimon memory counter? You know, like, what's the difference between this and a Chrono Clash counter? Like, it's so stupid, dude. It's so stupid. Not only that, but now it's like whenever you set up your board, you have to put your official energy counter, your official energy generator, your official energy cards on to the side, your ride deck off to the side, and your deck off to. It's like you're playing fucking like it's like you're playing a board game. Eventually, Vanguard's gonna have a 3rd reboot. And it's then this one, it's like, okay, well, you have like your energy zone, you have your ride deck zone, you have this extra zone over here, and make sure to bring in your 5 little coins and dice to keep track of different things going on. Like, eventually it's going to feel like Shadowverse Evolve. And, you know, I think Shadowverse is cool, but Jesus Christ, like, you need a fucking app to play the game. I don't think I have any more to rant about in terms of like energy. Over Trigger's fucking stupid. That shit should go away, but it never will because Kidani would rather you fucking type in social media that you hate the fucking Over Trigger than actually do anything about it. Energy's fucking stupid. Obviously, they made it so they could sell you these fucking energy cards with Aichi and Kai on the background. And I hope that the next mechanic at least doesn't force you to run the same fucking card at 3 copies or 4 copies. I want to see maybe a mechanic that... I don't know. I don't know what kind of mechanic I want to see. That's another thing too. It's like back in the day when you asked people to draw a car before cars were invented. And everybody was giving like some completely weird fucking take. And it's like, we don't know what we want until Bushiroad shows us what we want and how we can make that better. Like, Persona Red is so bad. It's literally just a homogenized, fucking simplified version of just writing and getting a gift. But made for, you know, dumbed down and made stronger. So, who knows? Maybe the next one we get is at the beginning of your turn, your front row gets 10k and you draw an extra card. We'll have to wait and see. I hope the next mechanic's defensive. I want to see more defensive options, especially so that you can make going first, like, not, like, an auto win. But that's just me. Guys, thank you for sitting down. Thank you for taking the time out of the day. It's been almost 35 minutes, and, yeah, we're done with the video. So, like, comment, subscribe. Let me know down below what you think is the best or worst mechanics for Bushiroad card games. Alright, bye guys.